कि निर्भया केस जो हुआ 2012 के बाद, सो बहुत नीड ये फेल्ट हुई कि एवरी वुमेन शुड डिजर्व अ रिस्पेक्टेबल, सेफ एंड सिक्योर वर्किंग प्लेस बेसिकली. बट मैं अभी अब जहाँ एडवोकेसी मैं कर रही हूँ पॉश के बारे में, और जिन कंपनीज में आई गो फॉर पॉश ट्रेनिंग, सो वी आर सेटिंग द ट्रेंड दैट पॉश को जेंडर न्यूट्रल भी किया जाए. यानी सी बिकॉज द हरासमेंट कैन हैपन विथ एनी जेंडर, so that is why we are advocating that each gender must be covered under the POSH, but primarily abhi bhi POSH Act 2013 covers only women. Any act which is unwelcome, which makes you uncomfortable, it is making of sexually colored remarks, showing of any pornography and some sort of electronic means, double meaning jokes and all those things. Any behavior, it may be of verbal, non-verbal nature, physical, then so all these comes under the definition of sexual harassment. Very important that basically there are two types of sexual harassment. One is quid pro quo and one is hostile work environment. So वही मैं बोल रही हूँ कि ऐसा होता ही, every lady goes through it in some form or the other.
A girl, she died because of too much of pressure, work pressure. बहुत सारा
work pressure. Yes.
तो ये भी कहीं ना कहीं पे इसमें कवर्ड है क्या कि where too much of pressure on somebody. So welcome to episode 7 of Dr. AB's Podium. I am back after a very short break. हमारा जो हमारा एपिसोड नंबर 6 था, बहुत अच्छे व्यूज़ मिले उसको. Now here I am to discuss about a very important topic which is called POSH. इंडिया, जैसे हमने लास्ट एपिसोड में बात किया था, इंडिया इज़ वेरी सून सेट टू बिकम द AI कैपिटल ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. बट एट द सेम टाइम अगर आप देखोगे यहाँ पे जिस तरीके से बिजनेसेस ग्रो हो रहे हैं, जिस तरीके से यहाँ पे इंडस्ट्री ग्रो हो रही है, there's a lot of opportunity which comes in terms of employment for a lot of people. Now when we talk about employment, it is employment for both. It is employment for men as well as for women. There are a lot of women who are now doing really well in their careers. They're doing really well in businesses, in corporates, in different sectors. But then there is a very important law which is called POSH, which was set in motion in order to provide a safe working environment for women. To understand more about this, I have Miss Deepali Sadavarte with me over here. She is a trainer in POSH. She has been training a lot of people, a lot of companies in this particular on this particular subject. So, बहुत important subject है. Enjoy करिए इस discussion को. Ma'am, welcome to the episode.
Thank you so much.
So, to begin with, first I would like to understand what exactly is POSH.
Thank you once again for inviting me. And to begin with, POSH is prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. So this particular act was passed in 2013. तो आप सबको पता होगा कि निर्भया केस जो हुआ 2012 के बाद, सो बहुत नीड ये फेल्ट हुई कि एवरी वुमेन शुड डिजर्व अ रिस्पेक्टेबल, सेफ एंड सिक्योर वर्किंग प्लेस. एंड दिस इंसिडेंट happened when she was traveling back to the home from her workplace. So that is why much agitation occurred in the country, and ultimately in December 2013 this act was passed. So this is a women-centric act basically. But मैं अभी अब जहाँ एडवोकेसी मैं कर रही हूँ पॉश के बारे में, और जिन कंपनीज में आई गो फॉर पॉश ट्रेनिंग, सो वी आर सेटिंग द ट्रेंड दैट पॉश को जेंडर न्यूट्रल भी किया जाए. यानी सी बिकॉज the harassment can happen with any gender, so that is why we are advocating that each gender must be covered under the POSH, but primarily abhi bhi POSH Act 2013 covers only women. So the main object of this act is to provide a safe, secure and a dignified workplace for women to work.
Okay. So when we say workplace, I want to understand how do we define a workplace?
Yes.
Because generally people will say workplace मतलब मेरा office.
बिल्कुल.
Right? So how do you really define the workplace, or how does the law define the workplace? workplace?
Okay, so under the law, various definitions are given. So workplace is defined as that place where an employee comes on a daily basis to work. So he may be a permanent employee, temporary employee, but even the scope of the definition of workplace is widened because the act is new, it is evolving. So they have introduced the concept of extended workplace also. So first I will talk about workplace. So workplace is any workplace where the employee on a daily basis he is coming to the office. For example, if I take the example of a private company. So if the private company is say situated in Balewadi, so an employee coming to a place in Balewadi, where in our tech business park, say on floor number 4, 102 is the flat. So that particular place is workplace. But having said that, in the capacity of his duties as an employee, if he is to travel, if he has to travel to attend any business conference or any meeting, so that particular place where he is visiting is representing that employee in the capacity of the employee of that organization. So that would also be covered under the definition of workplace.
So anywhere if she is required to travel
Yes,
also anywhere.
yes. For example, if the company is providing transportation facility, say cab facility, so once he steps from his home into the cab, so that cab would also be considered as a workplace. So if any incident takes place during that transportation, that would be covered, that will qualify as a case of a sexual harassment if any incident takes place.
At a workplace?
Yes, at a workplace. So in case if he happens to visit a conference which is in Bangalore, and for example the company has made the accommodation in say XYZ hotel. So if any incident is taking place at that hotel also, that would be, the hotel would be considered as a workplace. It comes under the definition of extended workplace.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, of course, everybody, we have seen these cases happen, I think way back in maybe the early 2000s,
Yeah.
where there was a lot of, movement called as Me Too,
Me too.
which happened.
Yes.
And lot of women came out, they spoke out in the open, they discussed about what happened with them.
Yeah.
Now, in any kind of crime that happens, not just this kind of a crime, it could be any crime. I had discussed this about cybercrime also.
Yeah. Yeah.
That people don't report, people don't come ahead and they don't report.
Yeah.
So, though there is a law that is there, how easy or how difficult do you find it is for training people or letting them know as to come ahead and speak out first?
See, you are very right on this, that still we cannot deny this fact that India has a male patriarchy system, right? Women, though the trend which I am seeing in the last 2-3 years, that the incidents are there, the gravity and the number of incidents of sexual harassment are on a rise. But at the same time now more and more women are coming up, they are speaking. Firstly, my humble request, and a very humble, genuine request to all women would be, don't just keep mum and silence on this subject. It is very imperative to talk, because by ignoring this, sexual harassment doesn't go away. So that is why we advocate to have POSH trainings in the companies. So these trainings make them aware of the rights which they possess under this act. What are their rights? What is the redressal mechanism in the company? Which body looks after the redressal of the sexual harassment cases? So once this awareness is spreading, I am seeing that more and more women are coming up and they are getting justice. So yes, we have a long way to go. It's just been 10 years, but still I am hopeful that now more and more women are coming up and they are speaking.
So, right now, since you mentioned in the beginning that the law is right now centric or focused on women.
Yes.
But yes, there are developments like you said that they're happening where the law becomes more gender friendly.
Yes. So what is many companies now are going in for gender neutral policies. POSH policy is the basic document which a company must have, which a company or an organization having 10 or more employees. See, POSH Act becomes applicable to each and every workplace where there are 10 or more than 10 employees working. And as I mentioned, that the employees could be part-time, full-time, So when there are say less than 10 employees also, the companies need to have a POSH policy. And the POSH policy, by drafting only, now companies are going in for gender neutral policies wherein all genders are covered, including transgenders are also covered. So every gender is getting covered.
Why I'm trying to ask you this is because आज ये जो law है it is centric on women.
Yes.
यहाँ पे yes there is a difficulty because people find it very difficult कि भाई कैसे आके बताएं, right?
हाँ.
मैं ये पूछ रहा हूँ कि अगर when it becomes gender neutral,
हाँ.
जब women are finding it so difficult, you can imagine how difficult in a patriarchal society
Yes.
a man also would come and find
yes.
it to be difficult.
तो इस एक्ट में प्रोविजंस है मलिशियस कंप्लेंट्स के लिए भी. तो अगर आप फॉल्स कंप्लेंट्स फाइल करते हो, यानी एक्ट दिया है विमेन के लिए, सो ऐसा नहीं है कि विमेन उसका मिसयूज करेंगे अपने यूज़ के लिए. एंड इट सी जनरली व्हाट आई एज अ पॉश कंसल्टेंट व्हाट आई हैव सीन, see 97 to 98% cases are genuine. No lady would go and because ultimately it will come back on her.
Correct.
It will sabotage her image and everything. I mean, it will be very difficult to go in for another new employment also. So 97 to 98% cases are genuine. Yes, 2-3% there are loopholes now, it's a part of system. But then even if a lady files a malicious complaint against a man, and if the IC committee during the investigation finds out that a false complaint is being filed, so definitely there is penalty on the women for filing a malicious complaint. And even also I will tell you that this law gives you the power to both the complainant and the respondent, that is the perpetrator, the victim, as well as the perpetrator, the respondent, to go and seek redressal under IPC. So that is why it is not just restricted that, oh, I am now the victim, I can't do anything. No, you can go and file an FIR and you can seek police help and police redressal also.
So you mentioned about there's the mandatory compliances that are there for every company. Could you explain those compliances?
Yes. So to start with, first of all, every organization, as I mentioned, having 10 or more employees must have a POSH policy. A robust POSH policy, just not on paper, not just a tick mark compliance, a robust POSH policy. Secondly, need to have an IC committee. The name was Internal Complaints Committee, but after 2016 they realized that IC committee's role is not just to cater and solve the cases of sexual harassment, but to overall create an environment of safe and secure working environment. So that is why IC committee formation is mandatory. Then you need to have sensitization sessions, awareness sessions for the employees. Under the Act, it is mentioned that the IC members, because they should be well equipped to handle and solve the cases of sexual harassment, for them a separate technical training is prescribed under the Act.
And how many members are there in the IC committee?
See, IC should consist of minimum 4 to 5 members, minimum 4 members, out of which one will be an external member. External member as in a POSH consultant, or one who has the knowledge of the POSH Act, an advocate or a person from an NGO who is. But see, this is where the loophole comes, because in the Act it is mentioned a person from an NGO, but they will take any person from any NGO, even if that NGO is not working in the POSH area. So that is why I want to emphasize here, have a person who is well versed with the provisions of the POSH Act. Then amongst the employees, you have to take 2 members, right? And the IC is always headed by a presiding officer who is the senior most female employee of the organization. So these 4 constitutes the quorum of the IC. But minimum is 4. It is better to have 5 or 7 odd numbers, so that while coming at a consensus there is no
Correct.
bias.
And what is the constitution of male-female ratio in that?
50% has to be women. The IC should constitute 50% quorum should be women.
Okay. And then about the further compliances?
Yeah, so sensitization sessions, then IC capacity building sessions. In each quarter, ideally the IC members should meet, but if not possible in each quarter, at least twice a year the IC members should meet to review the overall functioning of the organization. Minutes needs to be maintained of the IC committee meetings, and very, very important, the last step is the submission of the annual report. Every organization which follows POSH Act has to submit this annual report with the Ministry of Women and Child Development. One report goes to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs under the as a part of the board report, and one goes to the Ministry of Women and Child Development.
Okay. And how do we submit this report? Where exactly the report has to be submitted?
Report in Pune, it is not yet still online. Some POSH is applicable to it is applicable all over India, to each and every district of India. But if I talk about Pune, then the district collector office at Budwarpet, you have to submit there.
Okay. So a lot of companies are now becoming very serious about POSH implementation and guidelines and everything. POSH training, is it mandatory for every company?
See, POSH training is mandatory. As I said, under the Act it is mentioned that every organization having 10 or more employees need to have POSH trainings, and the frequency, though it is not stated there, but ideally twice in a year POSH training has to be conducted. Because see, for example, if a case of sexual harassment comes and the employees are not sensitized about it, they don't know where to complain. How will I get justice? And POSH Act was basically formulated that in India, as you know, going and filing an FIR, फिर वो कोर्ट और पुलिस के चक्कर पे चक्कर हो जाते हैं. The main purpose of this act is that this act gives you immediate, आपको बहुत जल्दी time based यहाँ पे आपको you get this
solution.
Yes.
नहीं तो इसमें ये था कि see before the POSH Act came, companies did have an HR department.
Yes.
तो या जैसे विसल ब्लोअर पॉलिसीज भी कंपनीज में होती थी पहले. तो स्पेसिफिकली देन इसका ये ज़रूरत क्यों आया था इसमें?
See, HR department in general is looking after the human resource, we can say, and POSH Act was basically formulated to exclusively look after the cases of sexual harassment only. And after this act came, what we have seen, the background also I will give about the Bhavri Devi case. It happened in 1992. So, if I talk about this Bhavri Devi case, which happened in 1992, so Bhavri Devi was a Sathin, a rural agent. She was appointed by the state of Rajasthan to exclusively look after prevention of child marriages, to stop the child marriages. And during the course of her work, she got to know that a 9-month-old baby girl was getting married in the village. And she stopped the marriage and everything, but the next day she was brutally raped, and so all this happened, and then she went and filed an FIR and everything. Now this is a case of 1992 which I am talking about, and the case was filed, this particular case was filed in District and Session Court of Jaipur, and in 1995 all the perpetrators got acquitted. But then a group of NGOs came together, they filed a public interest litigation, and ultimately the Supreme Court passed Vishakha guidelines. So these guidelines, they form the basis of passing of the POSH Act 2013. Why I am emphasizing this? Because in Vishakha guidelines, the definition of employer or what is sexual harassment, the redressal mechanism, I see nothing was there. Duties of employer was not defined. So that is why when a woman goes through these kind of harassment, sexual assault, there should be a separate legal body who will look after the cases of sexual harassment. So the need was felt, and ultimately, if I talk, still now, unfortunately, Bhavri Devi has not yet got justice. But recently we saw her interview, which was conducted by Barkha Dutt, that she led the path for this passing of the POSH Act and everything. So, because if HR will, in general, will look after the issues of the human resource, but there is a separate body, and that is why the women, while going in for employment, while applying for a new job, if she knows that, oh yes, there is a POSH committee, there is POSH applicable and it is being followed, an IC committee is there, so she can work with that confidence and without any fear that, okay, if anything happens to me, I can go, and at least there is someone who can take care of my issues there in the organization.
So, like we defined, like in this act, there is a proper definition of workplace and extended workplace, like you mentioned. So, similarly, harassment also would be defined in that. So,
yes.
What exactly would be the definition of harassment?
Yes, under the act, sexual harassment is defined as any act which is unwelcomed, which makes you uncomfortable. It is making of sexually colored remarks, showing of any pornography and some sort of electronic means, double meaning jokes and all those things. Any behavior, it may be of verbal, non-verbal nature, physical, then so all these comes under the definition of sexual harassment. Very important that any behavior which has a sexual connotation to it, because not every behavior will come under sexual harassment. But in a remarkable case, the Supreme Court has also stated that only physical touch will not qualify. It will not be just the basis of sexual harassment, because sometimes whistling, these kind of making of comments, body shaming, making fun of your appearance, so all this will be covered under the definition of sexual harassment. So the scope is much more widened. It is not just restricted to physical touch. Yeah.
And there's something called indirect harassment, indirect harassment, both these things?
Yes, so see, under indirect harassment, as I said, whistling, singing of songs, then maybe, trying to just staring, stalking. So all this will come under indirect harassment.
So here, a lot of times passing of remarks,
yes,
or directly, communicating, these things happen.
Yes.
Now, have you come across, how many cases do you really come across every day, or maybe in a week or in a month?
Yeah. So now I'm working in this area since 2.5 years. On an average, in a month I get 2 to 3 cases.
It's quite high.
Yeah, it's high. Yes, and that is the thing. When I conduct the sessions, generally women don't speak up there, but afterwards they come and they confide with me, and maybe I get calls on my personal calls I get. And yes, as I said, so at least I'm happy that women are showing up. They are expressing their concerns, and we are getting. See, sexual harassment is, as I said, it is very subjective. For one woman, some passing of a comment or a compliment, she might not feel it uncomfortable.
Tuba, I think the word probably that
Yes.
We use is flirting. Some people use the word flirting, in this case.
Yeah. See, the major difference between flirting and sexual harassment is, in flirting, it is welcomed by both the parties. Somewhere the consent is the main determining factor. So in flirting, there is a mutual consent. In sexual harassment is one-sided, because one of the party is feeling uncomfortable, unsafe. So this is the major differentiation.
Correct. So you mentioned that this particular law, since it came into existence, the timeline of resolution is speeded up, or it is faster.
Yes.
So what is the typical timeline that somebody can look at?
A case of sexual harassment has to be investigated and completed within a period of 3 months, 90 days. It works on fast track basis, fast track scheme. So that is why, and that is why women are having faith in the judiciary, in this system. That okay, if I file a case today, within 3 months, I am going to get justice in whatever form, but I am going to get justice.
So generally, what are the actions? If in case suppose somebody is proven guilty.
Yeah.
So what exactly are the further actions that can be taken?
See, POSH, as I said, it's an evolving law, and see, it's not a mathematical law, 2 plus 2 4. So under the Act, no specific, for this particular kind of sexual harassment, this is the punishment. It's not like that. It depends upon the severity of the case. Some companies follow such strict zero tolerance policy that even a subtle form of sexual harassment, they will terminate the employee if it is proven after the investigation. But it will depend upon, say, asking the victim to go for counseling sessions, an apology in writing. Okay, so or maybe some kind of community service, attending counseling sessions with the POSH trainer or with any psychologist. In case if the complainant has opted for a formal way of mechanism, right? These all options I have told, which they come under informal way of mechanism. But in case the victim goes for a formal way of inquiry, then it can also range from financial damages. She can ask for the financial damages. The victim can ask for transfer to any other branch or department, or the reporting manager be changed, and in severe cases, termination.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you share some kind of cases that you come across?
Sure.
Why I'm asking this is because see when we know when more and more people know
Yes.
that there are these cases happening, they will become aware.
Yeah.
And they'll feel that okay, ये सब मेरे साथ नहीं होता.
नहीं हो रहा है.
They will also feel confident to come and share more.
I will tell you one thing. As a POSH consultant, ये मेरे साथ भी हुआ है. वही मैं बोल रही हूँ कि ऐसा होता ही, every lady goes through it in some form or the other. You are walking on the street. There is staring, there is whistling, there is passing of comments. So ऐसा होता ही नहीं है कि कोई ladies में से जाती नहीं है. Only the thing, the mindset ऐसा थोड़ा हो गया है कि छोड़ो यार, इग्नोर करो, क्या नहीं. But still, जब वो repeatedly होने लग जाए and you feel that no, I cannot just tolerate it. It is, someone is crossing my personal boundaries. And when that and as I said, after the sessions, more and more awareness comes. So I will state some examples. Like, see, there was one case, it was a case of an intern basically. So she just joined one new organization, and her work was very up to date, and she was doing well in her project. And suddenly one day she found an envelope on her table. And in that envelope, just she opened, and there was a compliment written that you're doing a great job and everything. And she was very happy. Actually, she was hired by one HR who was a lady, and she thought that it was a note from her. So she was very happy. After 2-3 days, another envelope was there, and in that envelope it was written, "Tomorrow wear blue dress. It looks nice on you." And she just then, she was startled, and she thought, why my HR manager would write a note, such kind of a note, blue dress and all. But somehow she ignored it, And ultimately, after say about 15 days, there was one big envelope, and her project was about to end, and she was thinking of whether to join the company on a permanent basis, because offer letter was given to her. And there was I'm saying this, being a POSH consultant, my first statement is speak freely on these topics. So there was undergarments in that envelope, and she was just so shocked. And then she came to know that the manager of her department, he had this history of getting intimate and close with other interns also. And then finally she quitted, but before that she filed a case of sexual harassment with
Under this
the
particular-
IC. Yes. And then he was ultimately terminated. So this was one case. Then another. See, these cases are very common, like manager sending personal messages on mobile, or asking the employees or interns to after office hours when they reach their home, calling them and asking them to put the video on. So this is one of the common which, yeah. So there was one very unique case where a person was working in the organization, and he always see, every person has a sixth sense, and especially ladies have that sixth sense. So the lady used to feel very uncomfortable in his presence because he always used to stare at her chest. And she filed this case of sexual harassment against that person. And when he was called, but until proven guilty, you cannot just term him as a offender. So questions were asked to him that, do you have any issue with your eyesight, or what's the problem and everything. And then and other witnesses are also interrogated, because his friends were interrogated कि कुछ आँखों में प्रॉब्लम है या इसका बाकी ओवरऑल सबके साथ कैसा बिहेवियर है. एंड दे वर ऑल लाइक, नहीं कि कोई प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं है. But ultimately, by investigating the case, we found out that, and in his when he was called upon for interrogation, so in his defense he is saying that no, but madam, what, मैं ना लड़कियों की आँख में आँख डाल के नहीं देख सकता. तो then we had to tell him, अच्छा आँख में आँख डाल के नहीं देख सकते ना, पैरों को देखो. Why are you staring at the chest? So all these, they have their own defense mechanisms to just put the case under the carpet and to brush off the things. But yeah.
there was recently, आपने देखा होगा ना, एक बड़े कंपनी में हुआ where a girl, she died because of too much of pressure, work pressure. बहुत सारा होगा उसमें.
Yes.
तो ये भी कहीं ना कहीं पे इसमें covered है क्या कि where too much of pressure on somebody, elongated office hours, वो ठीक है कई जगह पे होता है कि where you have a specific project demands extra working hours, which is fine, which is acceptable, but making it a habit. And then putting that, is this covered under this?
No, unfortunately not, because as I mentioned, sexual harassment only covers those kind of behaviors which have a sexual flavor to it. So these will all come under mental harassment, but not sexual harassment.
Right.
In fact, insulting a person, a colleague in front of the employees, or deliberately isolating, retaliation, or just किसी एम्प्लॉय को प्रोजेक्ट से निकाल देना जानबूझ के विदाउट एनी वैलिड रीज़न. सो ये सब भी हरासमेंट के ही केसेस हैं, बट ये सेक्शुअल हरासमेंट में नहीं आएंगे. This will come under, yeah, so you will have to here also the employee, if he knows, he or she knows that this is being unjustifiable, so they can go and file whistleblower policies there, or maybe under your service rules you can go and file a complaint.
But इसका ऐसा, I'm थोड़ा digress कर रहा हूँ टॉपिक से, but इसका ऐसा कोई like POSH, there is no particular act as of now in our workplaces. No. Okay. So generally, जब हम when we talk about investigating the particular case, what are the steps that are followed under the investigation?
Right. See, POSH cases, maximum they happen behind closed doors, जहाँ पे आपको कोई डायरेक्ट एकदम विटनेस तो नहीं रहेगा, क्योंकि ये एक्ट्स ही ऐसे होते हैं कि आप खुले में तो नहीं करते हैं बट स्टिल यही है कि पॉश एक्ट फॉलोज करता है प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ नेचुरल जस्टिस को. तो स्टेप्स ये रहते हैं कि व्हेनेवर अ कंप्लेनेंट कम्स, शी गिव्स अ कंप्लेंट इन राइटिंग. सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, oral complaints are not entertained, only a written complaint has to be given in writing to the IC committee. Then the IC committee the second step, the IC committee will call upon the respondent against whom the complaint is filed. First of all, they will intimate the respondent that so and so particular case of sexual harassment we have received against you. So what you have to say. So timelines are there. Okay. So within so many days, say 10 days, he has to respond to the copy of the complaint. Now the respondent responds. The complainant has given the complaint. Now the complainant will be asked to describe the complaint in detail. Were there any witnesses, at what time, date it happened, जिसके अगेंस्ट आपने कंप्लेंट फाइल की है उसके साथ आपका रिलेशनशिप क्या है, व्हाट इज़ द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन यू एंड द रेस्पोंडेंट. फिर उसके बाद कंप्लेंट आने के बाद आईसी स्टार्ट्स विद द इन्वेस्टिगेशन. जो कंप्लेंट कॉपी में लिखा रहता है कि दीज आर माई विटनेसेस, बिकॉज सी आईसी हैज़ बीन गिवन द पावर्स ऑफ अ सिविल कोर्ट. So it starts the investigation saying it's a quasi-judicial authority. So it will summon the witnesses, right? It will ask if there is, for example, if any CCTV footage is there, it will look after the CCTV footage. If any documentary evidences are there, if in case any direct evidences, witnesses, are there. So all these will be called from both these parties, because a fair representation of his or her case, that opportunity is given to both the parties. So ultimately, after all this, a detailed analysis report is prepared after information is gathered, and ultimately the inquiry report is submitted to the employer of the organization. So step by step, the IC interviews each and every party separately.
So under POSH, what is the role of the employer in the entire thing?
The IC is the only authority which has been given the powers of entertaining and solving the cases of sexual harassment.
Okay, so employer
Employer doesn't have any authority and power.
Right.
It will just act upon the recommendations of the IC.
Report.
Yes.
And what is the most severe most punishment that somebody can get in this?
Termination. But here I want to add that if either of the parties are not satisfied with the recommendations of the IC, they have the option to go and file a case under CRPC, CPC.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
For example, I feel that I have not got justice. I feel that whatever, like he needs to have a higher punishment. So I will go and I will seek redressal from civil court or whatever, like CRPC.
So in whistleblower policies, we have seen that people generally file anonymous complaints. So under POSH, can somebody do that?
No. POSH do not entertain anonymous complaints. Only, for example, there's a legal department, 2 friends are there, and one friend is undergoing some kind of sexual harassment case, and her friend is knowing this, that this friend of mine is going sexual harassment. With her written consent, she can go and file a complaint on her friend's behalf.
Okay.
But anonymous complaints are...
But still you need to have a written consent.
Yes. Only in case of, say, death, mental or physical incapacity. See, mental incapacity, then your special educator, your psychiatrist, your guardian, they can file a complaint. Here, no written consent, because that person is not in that mental capacity. But otherwise, you need to, no anonymous complaints will be entertained.
So companies which have employee strength more than 10, what you mentioned, if they do not have a POSH guideline, or if they do not have an IC committee,
yes,
what are the penalties that they face?
The penalty ranges. Under the Act, it is written that if the organization is not complying with the provisions of the POSH Act, then there is a penalty of 50,000 rupees. If it fails to constitute an IC, there is a penalty of 50,000 rupees. And in case of repeated, repeatedly or non-compliance, because POSH, as I said, is mandated. So, for example, I tell you, there was a case of Medanta Hospital in Indore, MP, wherein the lady filed case of sexual harassment. She underwent sexual harassment, and since IC was not there, In the court, she filed this case of sexual harassment, and the court levied a penalty of 25 lakh rupees.
On the
So
hospital.
yes, so on the hospital. So that is why it will depend. It is subjective upon case to case. Act says 50,000 rupees, and in case of continuous non-compliance, the amount gets doubled up. And also for a series of incidents, or for a series for many years, if you are non-compliant, then the severest form of penalty is suspension of business license. You will not be allowed to carry on the business.
एक इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ दिमाग में आई मेरे कि व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट फाइलिंग कंप्लेंट्स
Yeah,
I was reading somewhere in one of the, in fact, I was watching one of the interviews on this
Yeah.
particular topic
yeah,
in some other podcast.
yeah.
तो उसमें एक इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट मेंशन हुआ था कि कंप्लेंट्स जब रेज होते हैं ना, तो देन द पर्सन अगेंस्ट whom the complaint is raised generally can be a person who is very senior in the organization.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
Now, suppose if the person is retired from the organization, कोई रिटायर हो चुका है वहाँ से, and then if somebody raises a complaint, now legally he is not an employee anymore.
Yeah.
Then in that case, how does the act treat this?
For this particular case, if I talk about, then the person who wants to complain, she will have to
Go through the legal, the other way,
the
the legal
police
way.
route.
Right.
Yeah. And जो आपने अभी बात कही, तो मुझे उस पे से ये बताना लग रहा है कि बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है कि क्या होता है, सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट के मैक्सिमम केसेस पावर ऑफ अथॉरिटी में ही होते हैं. बेसिकली देयर आर टू टाइप्स ऑफ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट. वन इज क्विड प्रो क्यो and one is hostile work environment. So quid pro quo is, it's a Latin term which means this for that. So generally a person who is in that power authority position, so he abuses, or he indulges in the acts of sexual harassment towards his juniors, because in return, if I don't get this in return, maybe I will not give a rise, a promotion, or a poor reviews in the performance. So this is a quid pro quo type of sexual harassment. And in hostile work and environment, as the name suggests, the environment becomes hostile. The environment becomes so uncomfortable that a lady is not just able to work in such kind of an environment because of maybe sexist jokes, taunting, commenting, all these, so physical touching. So here the environment is not just suitable to work in that professional setup. So as you said, it generally occurs in a authority of power.
So is POSH applicable to even MNCs which have their offices in India, or?
Yes, absolutely.
So although they could be headquartered somewhere
Yes,
else.
headquarters could be in US, but if they have a branch office in India having 10 or more employees, POSH is applicable.
So one more question I'll ask you. In case of extended workplace, somebody who has, say, this was also one more case which I had heard on that particular interview. तो यहाँ से अगर मान लीजिए कि somebody has traveled to say Germany, for example, और वहाँ पे अगर ऐसी कोई केस उसके साथ हुई, तो is that also treated as well?
Yeah, POSH 140 countries में है ये
Okay.
Act 140 countries में the Act is there. Now we will have to see whether Germany comes in that that list of countries. But if any incident takes place, as I said, the person who is representing X company of India will revert this case to the IC committee of his place in India.
Okay.
So, and if the German counterpart is having a IC there, so it will be mutually decided. Even the person can file a case of sexual harassment with the IC committee of the German company also.
So with the law now becoming better, or evolving, of course laws evolve with
laws
every
evolve. Yes.
time as time passes.
Yes.
So do you feel that this is now these cases are reducing, or what exactly is the impact that you have been seeing?
No,
last couple of days?
actually in the recent Economic Times survey, there was there was a survey that in fact cases are rising, but reporting is not happening. So cases are rising, but still companies, due to maybe our brand name will get affected, and our name will be sabotaged, and so because of this, the reporting is not that much taking place. But still, I'm hopeful that if I see the numbers in 2022, the number of reporting of these cases was pretty less as compared to now 2023. So reporting is there, and reporting is there, that means cases are rising.
Yes, it's rising.
Yeah. But companies are seeing it from that point of view that okay, now women, more and more women are at least speaking up, they are coming up.
आप जब ट्रेनिंग लेते हो पॉश का,
हाँ.
तो आपका ऑडियंस कौन होता है? कंपनी, कोई कंपनी है तो उसको who's the audience?
I insist that each and everyone should attend it.
No, is it only women or?
No. In fact, men should attend it.
I wanted to say that because rather than giving training to women,
Yes.
ठीक है, ये पहले हमने,
Yes.
being a man I'm saying this,
Yes.
there's absolutely no problem in admitting
not
this.
at all.
पहले हमको see, because in every single case,
Yeah.
first educating men is I think now becoming important.
Absolutely.
पहले हम अपने आप को educate करें, then we will be able to educate somebody
Sir,
else.
what happens, no? Because see, what is acceptable to one may not be acceptable to another person, and respecting one's own personal boundary is so important. बात ये हो जाती है कि men should be made more aware because they should know कहाँ तक बात करनी है, कहाँ रुकना चाहिए. So इसके लिए I mean every gender is covered in my training, but particularly I emphasize that it's not that it is women centric, so only women should attend. Men
नहीं,
should
why I'm
also-
saying men specifically, मैं दो चीज़ों के बारे में कह रहा हूँ. One, because cases are filed against men,
Yes.
so क्या नहीं करना
नहीं
चाहिए, ये
करना
होगा.
चाहिए, बिल्कुल.
Secondly, like we spoke in the beginning, this is becoming a gender agnostic
Yes,
law.
yes.
तो ये भी होगा ना कि they'll also understand what their own
बिल्कुल, क्योंकि
laws are.
ऐसे
Provisions are.
the number of cases which I have encountered as an external member, but yes, there were cases where even men got sexually harassed. The percentage is very less, but still there are cases where men are also getting sexually harassed.
And यहाँ पे तो they will not be able to come and speak also.
Yes.
Because of, like you said, patriarchal
Yes.
society है,
Yes.
male ego आता है.
Yes.
Nobody will be able to speak in those
Yeah,
cases.
but
Right.
ठीक है, हो रहा है.
Evolve हो रहा है.
Evolve हो रहा है.
Yes. How is the role of social media into all this? ये जो हम लोग cases की बात कर रहे हैं कि reporting, yes, एक definitely है, awareness है.
हाँ.
But social media also, is it playing a lot of role you feel in this?
Yeah, because I feel not even a single day goes when I am not seeing a case of sexual harassment in the newspaper. The recent case which took place in the flight, I'm not recollecting exactly, but so all this Medanta case which I talked, or the Bangalore case where the lady, the Ola Uber case, recent one. So yes, see, in fact, because of media, I will say at least the awareness is increasing. Yeah, but as my underline would be, don't misuse the act. Don't misuse the act, and especially what I feel is कभी-कभी ऐसा हो जाता है कि सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट का केस अगर आता है तो पहले ही दिन हम इस कंक्लूजन पे जंप हो जाते हैं कि ओके, लेडी है तो उसके साथ हुआ ही होगा सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट. दैट अनबायसनेस, दैट जजमेंट somewhere comes in the mind. So for IC, that is why I said that IC training is why it is so important, because they should be practical, technical, but at the same time empathetic also towards both the parties. And that is why, as you are mentioning, that media is definitely media is playing a major role in at least spreading awareness about sexual harassment. I can say this, that earlier women don't used to speak up, or these cases used to go under the carpet. Many women were not coming out, but at least because of media now they are, these cases are coming up.
Right.
Yeah.
So training जो हम बात कर रहे हैं, we talk about training. So what all aspects are covered under the training part when we speak about training?
Training is very, it's a very detailed one. Like I usually conduct it for 2.5 hours training, and we start with how this, the mandate, how the act evolved, how the act came into force. First of all, the Rupan Deo Bajaj case, that was the first case actually of India, of an IPS officer, and she was the first Indian to file a case against outraging the modesty of a woman against KPS
This was an IPS officer who was
yes,
fighting.
yes. KPS Gill, if you remember this, this case was there in 1988. So I lay the ground principles on this. My session starts with this Rupan Dev Bajaj case, then moving forward to Bhavri Devi case. Then the various elements covered under the POSH Act, various definitions. We spoke about sexual harassment, employer, workplace. Then gradually, many case studies I show, many videos I show, because visual representation makes it easy for the audience to understand. And still, it's a sensitive topic, so that is why the visual representation helps them. Even if they are feeling a bit uncomfortable, at the end, towards the end, they open up. Then we take them through the redressal mechanism, details about IC and everything, and lastly, what penalty is there and all. And lastly, yes, very important, I take question and answers and quiz session. So to see whether they have slept or they have understood.
So is this act applicable to all sectors, private sector, public sector,
Yeah.
everywhere?
This act is applicable to all sectors, all government-owned companies, private companies, cooperative societies, hospitals, sports stadiums. So each and every sector is covered.
Now one interesting sector probably where
Educational sector, entertainment sector.
no, in education also,
Yes.
of course, workplaces are there.
Yes.
We are talking
Yes.
about workplaces.
Yes.
But since we also run an education setup
Yes.
here, we have students.
Hmm.
So students are not yet considered to be in a workplace. They are in an education setup, or they're in their classrooms. So is there any kind of a law which is still there in their case?
Yes, no, POSH is applicable for educational institutes also, and along with the POSH Act, the UGC guidelines come into force.
Okay.
So, along with POSH Act, UGC guidelines, and under the UGC guidelines also, POSH provisions are mentioned.
But then in this case, in education institutes, the staff will be covered.
Students are also covered. So, in a Calcutta High Court judgment, even they have covered a girl child, studying in a school. So a girl child studying in a school is also covered in 2012 some Calcutta High Court judgment. So students will be covered under the POSH Act.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yes.
So in their case, how will you define a workplace?
The premises, the educational institute.
So only the premises or any other place as well. So for example, people go out for industrial tours or trainings.
Absolutely, that will be covered.
Everything will be covered.
Yes, that will be covered.
Okay.
That will be covered.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
Any closing remarks you would like to share with us on this?
I just, I feel being a lady now working in this field, this is my passion, and I'm not just looking at it as a monetary thing. That is one aspect, but my only, as I mentioned during the podcast also, that I feel, every woman is going through this, but she should speak out. That is only my, ते आपण कळकळीचं असं म्हणतो ना की कोणत्याही बाईला, कारण what happens, it affects you psychologically also. It never happens that once I will return back from office, I will shut down that area of my mind, and no, it will affect you. And it's a very vulnerable phase. Women go through so much hardships because of this, because see, you're not able to concentrate on your work, your personal relationships gets affected. So my thing would be, and first of all, let's create, it is the employer's duty as well as co-workers and everyone's, as a moral citizen of this country, as a citizen of this country, it is my moral responsibility that anyone, I'm not here an advocate of just women, even men, as a human should feel safe and, comfortable and good, that okay, 9 to 10 hours where I'm going and working, I should be able to work in a peaceful environment. So yeah, so more and more steps should be taken for this POSH awareness, and so that the incidents, it will be better that on paper also, if the reporting comes down to zero.
Right.
Yeah.
This was a very interesting discussion which I had. We spoke in the beginning that you also train in POXO.
Yes. Of
So
course.
I will have another episode with you on that,
Sure.
because that's another very, very important area to
Yeah,
discuss.
absolutely.
Because
Because
our
our
children,
children, they are the
Yeah,
future
yeah.
citizens.
They're the future
of-
citizens.
Yes.
and I have a son who is 9 years old.
Yeah.
So parents need to be really
Absolutely.
aware about these things as well.
Yes.
So I hope you enjoyed this discussion today. It was a very important. It's a very important law that exists with us, and as employers or as companies or as employees who are working in different companies, different organizations, it becomes very important, a responsibility for all of us to create safe and good workspaces for each other. Because like the way I'm sitting here in one chair right now, somebody sitting next to me. We always have this personal space, no? The personal physical space that is there.
Absolutely.
So the way I should not invade that
Yeah.
and not make somebody else uncomfortable. I think this, by understanding this law further, it will help us to make our workspaces much better.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I feel women needs to be celebrated, and for celebration of women, the workspaces should be safe and secure and dignified. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do like, share, subscribe, comment में ज़रूर बताइएगा what else would you like to listen to on this podcast. मैं उस तरीके के guests आपके सामने लेके आऊँगा, and thank you so much.